Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ibadur Rahman Azaidi. At this opportunity, I will present the threat of terrorism for defense and security in Indonesia to reinforce my security studies in fulfilling final exam assignment. Acts of terrorism are still scourge that threatens peace in Indonesians. This year alone, the Indonesian's national police have handled 170 terrorism cases, a dramatic increase from the previous year, which recently 82 cases. The national's counter-terrorism agency states that 2.7 million Indonesians were involved in a series of terror attacks. Even though this number does not include followers and sympathizers of terrorist networks, terrorism is a form of real threat that disrupts the stability of country national security. According to Garrison defines terrorism as a use of force or violence to change the behavior of society, as well as by spreading fear and targeting certain part of society to influence other societies. The definitions of the terrorism itself was discussed for the first time in the European Conventions on the Suppression of Terrorism in 1977, in which there was an expansion of the meaning paradigm from crime against states to crime against humanity. Terrorism can be categorized as a systematic attack, which is often direct and announcing civilians. Effort to commit criminal acts of terrorism need to be carried out of comprehensive and influence many institutions, one of which the military. In Indonesia's government has involved the military in counter-terrorism since the early days of independence. During the regime of President Sukarno, military force was exercised as part of the counter-insurgency policy against the Darul Islam, Indonesian's Islamic Army, while during President Suharto era, military members became operator of intelligence operations and prosecutions carried out against extremist Islamic group born from the Islam network. The policies undertaken by the Indonesian government in dealing with terrorism are certainly different at each time. During the Old Order and New Order periods, the approach taken was more rigorous because it emphasized of the role of security enforcement apparatus. Meanwhile, during the Reformation's period, which was marked by the democracies, terrorism terrorism policy emphasized law enforcement because terrorism was associated with acts of criminal laws violations, even though terrorism was categorized as an extraordinary time. After the 200s, one of the threats that became to the attention of the country in the international world was the threat of acts of terrorism. Various acts of terrorism that have occurred in the world would have made the international community look seriously at the issues related to terrorism, even though basically the phenomenon of terrorism has existed for a long time. The meaning of threat causing the threat caused by the terrorism cannot be separated from the social constructions that occurred in the international world, so that almost every country in the world gives a terrorist label to a certain group, which is then interpreted as a threat to humanity. One of the triggers for this development was the occurrence of the acts of terror in the United States in 2001, at which time the WTC building became a terror target. The terror that occurred at the WTC building on September 11th, 2001 made the international world more aggressive in fighting terrorism. Even acts of terrorism are considered as a crime against humanity. Terrorism is considered an extraordinary crime. Therefore, special instruments are needed to tackle this crime that are considered unusual. Okay, maybe just this for me, and apologize if I have any mistake for my speech. Finally, say Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.